There seem to be lots of recurring themes throughout today. How do we talk to each other? That was one. When we do find each other and we talk to each other, how do we actually work together? That's another one. Users, how do we get users? Where are they? How do we prod them with sticks to tell them to tell us stuff? Designing for everybody. You know, everybody's going to be old in now. So we need to make things accessible for everybody. We're all going to have crap eyesight in 20 years. We're all going to be walking like this because we're older. Open source design, is it a thing?
Not yet.
Not yet, good. Keep that. And then talk. I mean, you know, there's lots of stuff here that you don't want to hear me talking. I want to hear you talking because there's lots of questions being asked. So the first things was, how do we communicate design-related work? And I'm not going to sort of go through each talk because that would take a long, long time. So it kept on coming up. Build a design team. So create a channel for design-related discussion, and that could be IRC, or it could be, as the lady said, or preferably not IRC. That's why it did say question, or maybe Slack. So I think that says we need to find tools that work for your community. There's no point in saying we have to use IRC because some people will, some people won't. And instead of me keeping on talking, how possible is it to get everyone on Slack or get everyone on IRC or bridging stuff? I know you can bridge from Slack into IRC. I've seen that as a feature, which I think is really useful. So a question for you: how do your projects communicate?
Well, I would just say that I'd be very reluctant to use Slack for a free software project.
But why is that?
Because I mean, if you want to build your infrastructure on a platform that isn't free, it's contradictory to the sort of what you're doing. We have XMPP, we have IRC. You can use the IRC through a browser.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would argue that you can't use it easily for a browser. I'd rather use something that's fit for purpose than something just because it's.
I mean, you can just follow the link in chat in the base IRC room. All you do is type in your room.
Right, but then you can scroll back, which Slack does give you.
But I mean, so the reason we brought up Slack earlier was for getting users involved, and now we're not talking about getting users.
Sorry,
involved,
that's
but getting.
well. There was a discussion about sort of, you know, designers over here, developers over here, and how do we get them together? So, as a designer, I know I use Slack because lots of other designers use it. I also use IRC because I know how to use IRC and I'm comfortable with IRC. I think it's more, and you're totally right. Why would you build an open source project on a closed platform? But I'm going to throw it back and say, if that's where users are, or if that's where developers are, and if you want developers, okay, philosophically you're right, but we need to come up with a good thing, or we need to find a good thing.
Yeah, I think meeting in person works best, especially if you organize a hackfest or something.
Yeah.
And you invite a designer or some kind of specialist in the field to inspire people, and then maybe introduce some topics. Like you could have a whiteboard where everybody can put on post-its with the topics they think are most interested, and then vote on them, have them pitch their ideas, and then talk about them, get people to work together in groups, and try to fix something on the spot. Something. That won't fix your issues, won't give you a final result, but people will know each other, and they can decide on what tools they will use to communicate.
That's I was really glad. Sorry, I was really glad to hear. Who was it that said it? I don't know who it was. Meet in person. Conferences like FOSDEM, conferences like any other technical thing, and I think that's one of the really good things of this year's FOSDEM, that they actually, for whatever reason, said, okay, we want design to be spoken about. There was a whole room of designers in here earlier on with developers. Meet in social, as Pablo said. Drink beer or your beverage of choice, whatever. That's how stuff happens. Yes.
Okay, one thing about IRC is that I would prefer to have only one program to use, and if I go for my project on the IRC, I would prefer also to go to design discussion on IRC. Regarding the meeting person is very nice, but for example, I come from Romania, and if I know that you all guys are going to meet in person, you're going to know each other very, very better. And instead of being inclusive, you're going just to form a small group. And that's not the purpose. Purpose of IRC is to...
That's also true. That's also true. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm gonna. Yeah.
You've also got the idea that there are a lot of designers in the world, but not many of them actually know of an open source
Yep.
as a concept,
Yep.
let alone as a project, or the people, or the conferences.
Yep.
So it's hard to get, let's say, people to come to this conference because they don't even know what the whole topic is.
And that's one thing that I think us as open source designers have to go to where the designers are. So UXPA, IXDA.
Even the techies going to meetups that are designer meetups, because you actually end up in some amazing conversations.
Absolutely. Yep. Totally.
So regarding the tool conversation stuff, I think one of the big problems, or one of the big discussions we also had with topics, is that generally open source projects are a bit reluctant or at least skeptic about design changes, right? And so if we're starting by trying to introduce a new tool like Slack in the process, it seems so preposterous to start out with that. So I think like trying to use IRC is a small hurdle compared to what it would be to switch the whole project to Slack, which would kind of be I don't know. Totally overblown.
It would be a big hurdle for people who are already involved. People who aren't involved yet, there's no hurdle, right? They're not switching from anything.
Okay, so there's discussion to be had still, and that's, you know, it was really good to see Jan talking about that they have 2 or 3 hours of Google Hangouts, you know, actually talking. Okay, it's not in person, but it's, drinking beer and meeting people, really important. Conferences. Okay, so once you have actually found designers to work on your project or developers to work with you, how do you collaborate? So one of the things that kept on coming up, that designers come to a project and go, great, I want to get involved. Okay, GitHub, yeah, repo, clone, okay, shit, what do I do? So there's no clear sort of easy path for collaboration, for contributions. People who are interested in contributing don't know where to start. I forgot to finish off this line. Andrew Williamson from a talk that I saw yesterday kind of brought up a point which was kind of confrontational, that the focus on technical and sort of meritocracy and technical meritocracy in open source is clearly defined. You know, you commit, a bajillion lines of code, you're fucking awesome, or you fix 10,000 bugs, you're brilliant. You create 50,000 wireframes, or you do 67 hours of usability tests. I don't see any lines. Yeah.
You are very lucky because you yourself, you can't use the validation currency that most open source projects use, which is committing code. And a lot of people in the community can't. I had to learn. I went through the process of learning GitHub and start setting patches as a way of getting that kind of say.
I think the best way to overcome that is to be bold and show potential. In many projects, you will find that there are no designers.
Yeah.
So that's a good opportunity to show a totally different design and say, hey, your project could look like this.
So you dangle the carrot of something, and they go, oh, I like that.
Yeah.
And that's a good idea. That's a good idea.
Maybe it's possible, like I did on Diaspora. My first attempt was, but I did it on purpose.
Yeah.
Really,
You seem like a slightly, confrontational person, which is really good, in a good sense.
I wanted to just like start the conversation. It worked.
Yeah.
Some people hated it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But do you really have to have
Who is
thick
this guy
skin?
who's trying to take everything?
Yeah.
Sorry, because it's like I really like that approach, like from a design perspective, that because that's the only way. Let's say in my head, I see how to approach, let's say, development problems. That I'm a designer, so I'll redesign your website, let's say, to make it more user friendly. and then I'll wait for feedback. But when I know that you're a developer, but it's like when the feedback came back, did you feel very, I don't know, hurted by the feedback in the terms of, oh my god, I actually got shit, I didn't like it.
Yeah.
But you can find, you have to relax that and be like prepared for that, because that will surely happen. You will be trolls and haters everywhere. And what I did, I did it on purpose, and I already had my mind prepared to get bad criticism, feedback,
Yeah.
and things like I don't like that color or whatever. And you have weapons, as you have with your clients. Sometimes you do some work, and a client will tell you, hey, I don't like that. And the first one is always asking why.
So that's.
Make the font bigger. Yeah.
Yes, sorry, it's really small. It's Evernote. I don't have to change it. But that's a good thing that you said. So I redesigned something, and the first answer is, well, why? So maybe what we have to do is give them our design rationale, our design reasons. So the reason I changed this was because I tested it with 2 people and nobody was able to find it.
Yeah,
I-
I tried to share with you
Yeah.
later the reasons I presented for the Yes Foundation site, which was a document like this long. The reason I used that one,
Yeah.
that forum.
Yes.
I'd really,
Yeah. Go on.
I'd really like to get designers involved in the project, man, and it's all like really heavy kind of academic developers, and they don't really value the design aspect of it, so we're trying to find a way in for them. But we have a few things that are like very obvious problems that people realize when they start like making t-shirts or printing things like the colors never look the same, things like that. And that's something I can tell them, like, hey, a designer could help us here. But I don't know, is there any way I can find a designer to answer that one? Maybe, I don't know if that's like a really difficult problem or if it's like totally simple. I have no idea.
I don't think that's a difficult.
Those are very simple problems, but that's the thing. What I find hard, let's say, is like you guys communicate in specific channels. Designers, they don't really have that specific channel, so we either know each other through Twitter, that's how we chat, or I don't know, comment on projects on Behance. Behance is the main Behance. It's like BEHANCE.com. So that's the main page where people actually submit work, and there is a discussion in there going on, so you can find designers and approach them through there.
I was wondering, like, if I open a ticket in the GitHub tracker and marked it as design, maybe designers would never stumble across that.
Well, but that's it. It's good you brought that up because that was again something that Jan said, and it kept on coming up. Even if it's going to be as simple as just in your bug tracker tool, open a problem and put design, or maybe even put UI, or even put UX, something that is, clear that it's for design.
Somehow aggregate that across projects. That would be just interesting.
Yeah.
To see.
Yeah.
That's won't be useful right out of the box, probably.
Kind of the job board, or combine it with the job board idea that just like we can say,
Just
hey,
surface the work.
on like GitHub, guitars, whatever.
What's that?
Just check out like all the.
Okay, so I've got 1 minute to go through another thing that about users. So Roy made it very clear that they did two usability testing phases on Drupal, and it surfaced loads of problems that the project lead said we're doing nothing else until these are fixed. So having usability testing, user research is really important. How can you design for people if you don't know what those people are in broad strokes? User research is so important, and there's a whole bunch of different problems. Well, how do I get them? They're all over the world. Okay, but at least kind of understand the need for it. There are different kinds of users. There's lots of sensitivities, but be aware of the importance of it. I wanted to get to these 2 things. So, where do you find designers in open source projects? There's designers here and there's developers here. Where do designers hang out? Pub. Okay, that's good.
That's the right question. Like the right question would be, how do you get designers interested in working on this?
Well, they are. It's not just. I don't think there's I know loads of designers who are not just focused on money, and there's a lot of technologies that, let's say, they've got expertise in, but corporations just say that, oh, you're too junior or you're too senior, I can't pay you that much money. And sometimes it's genuinely not about money, it's about cost. And there's loads of designers who design for making things better rather than new iPad or something.
Yeah.
But then I mean, like, how do you get them involved in a way that it's like, how do you get them to know of your project? How do you get them started? It's not
That's
about
hard.
like,
This is something that I'm trying.
Yeah.
It's like, is there any sort of platform that will be easy to communicate in between these two?
so that would be kind of the thing that has been coming up. Like,
I think I'm going to suggest a thing. We already have a platform. It's called Meeting in Person, right? And it's developers, like somebody up there said, developers going to design meetups. So if that's UXPA, IXDA, those kind of things, and saying, hi, I'd like to talk to you about open source projects. Not in a super heavy technical way, but in a more philosophical way. Do you want to get involved? And offer free beer.
This is a great, the only reason why I'm cutting you all short, because we need to kind of clear up what quarter two. It's because I did say that if there were anybody in the room,
Yes,
anybody
yes.
in the room who is a developer or is involved in a project and would like to pitch their project or talk about it to the designers in the room, that they would give them time to do so. So I just want to make sure that there is nobody who came to talk about their project and introduce it to designers.
We'd like to do that if still possible, but
Yes, definitely.
5 minutes are for, so go for it.
Definitely.
can I just use your
Yes, sure. And as we're
Should we create that great platform? Maybe we can start with
yeah, and
first one.
as we're getting that ready, I mean, maybe this is a really good example of how to do it. So, a guy working or a girl working on an open source project goes to the UXPA, the User Experience Professionals Association, says, I'd like to pitch you my project. I'd like to get somebody involved. And come and drink beer afterwards. So I'll hand over
to Bram. Yes. I think I don't know whether it's on, but I think the website of our project already pretty much makes it clear that we could use a designer. The logo's 12 years old, and what the platform is or what the project is all about is that it's a very kind of specialized web content management system used in academia to give open access to research outputs mainly. So it's being used by about 1,000 universities worldwide, but also by organizations like the United Nations and the World Bank. So in the most recent development cycle, we actually implemented a whole new theme based on Bootstrap, but we did it without affecting the UX. So actually we kept everything pretty much in place to make sure that we didn't upset anybody. But we could use some designers to come in there and to fix some of the problems that we have. We would be open for discussion there. So on dspace.org, there's a link about getting started. There's a mailing list. There's a bug tracker. There are different ways. One of the things pretty much for developers, but also for the UX community, we're trying to use more and more discussions on Stack Overflow because they're more persistent there and they have a pretty powerful tagging system. But we haven't been leveraging the UX community on Stack Overflow just yet, but we'd like to do that at some point. Exactly, or talk to us and we'll get started.
Thanks. Let's see. Great. So I'm. Oh right, thank you. Plug that in. Yeah. Cool. Hi, I'm Ashish. I work on a project called Sandstorm, which is a way to host web apps on your personal server easily and safely. But I'm going to talk to you about a different project right now called OpenHatch, which I've used to work on in the past, and I still do, just less so. OpenHatch is a website intended to help people learn how they can get involved in open source. And we have a whole bunch of contributors who are working on this code. I guess it's enormous. One thing that people mentioned is the idea of a job board for design. And we have this button you can click labeled Find a Project. And if you want to get involved in an open source project, and if you're like me when I originally designed this UI 5 years ago, you think, great. What people want to know is what language are bugs for the project in? And is it an easy bug? Or is it just a regular bug that hasn't been labeled by the project as easy? But it turns out there are other ways you can contribute to projects, like doing design work, like writing documentation. And maybe you want to know what the project is more than you want to know exactly which easy Python task you could look at. This UI gives you no context as to what the project is. I mean, when I designed this, I made it with me in mind, and I know what every single project on the site is, but I bet most of you don't. So we, OpenHatch, would love design help. We have a whole bunch of contributors at all levels of Python and web experience, and so you won't feel like you're the only one who doesn't know how to do something very technical and complicated. The way to get in contact with us is, probably the best way is via this contact link. What do you say? Look, man, that's why I'm bringing this up. It didn't occur to me that, okay, so the best way is this hello@openhatch.org email address, which is available from Contact Us. Whatever, you just go to the site and you do Command F for contact and you follow the link. So that's OpenHatch. I'll answer questions afterwards, I guess. Thanks.
Anybody else?
I mean, actually, OpenHatch would be that kind of job.
Yeah.
So you could have like the design thing instead of
So make it better and added functionality for what people are looking for.
Okay, hi. I'm from distribution Linux. This Linux distribution, which grew out of an academic project, and it has kind of these great mathematical research ideas to make a really reliable system that you can have like rollbacks to well-known states, and you can easily tweak and modify any package and have a great amount of variability and things like that. So the hackers who are into it love it, but the main core don't really understand, or they're not really convinced of the value of the design so much. I really like the logo, actually. It's these lambdas, and it looks, I think it's nice. But yeah, this is one of the problems. The colors always look different. So it's like a little bit red, so it looks totally purple on some screens, and if you print it, it's like totally very unpredictable. And so I tried to start off, there's a wiki, and I tried to start off just by reading articles on style guides and stuff, just to kind of, I thought maybe if I start a style guide myself, not knowing anything about design, hopefully somebody who actually knows will come in and say, this is all wrong, can you, could maybe help out like that. So that would be an awesome thing if someone could jump in.
So there you're asking for help or branding?
Yeah, I thought maybe like a style guide would be a start, and like pick a font. Like the font is also like anybody uses whatever font they feel like on the day, and it's like totally inconsistent. If I could, I'll just try to put up the style guide.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
What's your name again? Killian.
And how can we contact you?
Yeah, I can give you the details after. We have a mailing list, and there's the wiki, and we have an IRC channel. And I'm just really worried if a designer steps up and says, "Oh, I can help," and everyone's going to go, "Oh, the general reaction is like, we have more important bugs to solve, like adding support for some random thing, and." But I think it'd be, it's not a very well-known project, and I think it would be really cool if more people knew about it. But I think for anyone to go to the website and just have a look, I don't think it's very clear what it's about at all. I don't think I don't think you can tell by glancing at it what it is, or even if you start reading the documentation, you kind of need someone to sit down beside you and say, oh, you have to use this, and it has tended to like caught on purely by word of mouth. So yeah. Oh yeah, I will accept it. I can be your shadow publisher, and I can take all the flack, and then you can. But I mean, I think it might be an interesting project because it's like such a fresh field, and I think it wouldn't take much to convince people that you actually know what you're on about, and you could totally brand it. And you know, this could be, I don't know, maybe that's an attractive thing for designers. You can get your name on it, and yeah, okay. Thank you very much.